I use the FTP task all the time in SSIS packages. It is outside of the main data flow tasks. It's probably one of my more common tasks, that and the execute process. And I often use those two in conjunction. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take you through 3-4 videos of using the FTP task and combining that with the execute process task. And we're going to do a lot of real world things in this particular section. First up, I'm just going to give you an overview of what the FTP task is, how it works, how you can use it. I'm also going to give you the login information to an FTP that I've set up for this particular course. So you can actually download the files and work with the files yourself. You can actually connect up to our FTP. The second video is going to go a little deeper. Now that you've seen the basics of the FTP task, let's talk about dealing with multiple files. How do we do for each loops versus can we do it all in one shot? And then after that, I don't know if it's third video, fourth video, we're going to get into working with the execute process task. And one of the things that I've had to do very, very often is to zip up a set of files, upload them through FTP. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the data flow task to create a text file. Then we're going to use the execute process task to zip that text file up. And then we're going to use the FTP to load it up to a server. So we're going to, this is something you'll probably find many uses for in the real world. So we're going to take a look at that in here. So let's go ahead and just get started. I'm going to go launch the Visual Studio, create a package, just give me a brand new project, integration services, and we're going to start with just our plain FTP task. So here it is over here in the toolbox, right there, FTP task, just drag it onto the surface. Now the FTP task is also, or it takes advantage of a connection manager, just like many of the other tasks will. Now this is really handy because it means that we can have multiple FTP tasks, but only have to define the connection information in a single location, unlike what we used to have to do in the old DTS days. So the first step that you need to do is create yourself a connection here. Now this connection is, when I'm looking at it right here, you can see my server name, and I'm going to give you an actual FTP connection, okay? So here's the username. Let me zoom in. So there are the credentials, and your password right here is just learn it first. Okay, all lowercase, learn it first. So that's what you're going to use to log into FTP. Now this doesn't have to be FTP. This can be directories on a server. I'm just using this so that you can have some actual FTP information. Okay, so you can actually use this. You could load this up. So I'm going to type in learn it first and test the connection, verify things are okay. Notice my retries down in the bottom, and I say okay. Now, if you want to test that out instead of waiting for the connection manager, you can load up your browser of choice. I chose, in this case, Firefox here. And I could just go to ftp.learnitfirst.com. And it prompts me for my username and password. So again, SSIS 158, and the password is just learn it first. And we can remember the password, and so it just shows me a rudimentary FTP browser. We're going to be working for this video and the next video in chapter 4 for customers.txt. You can see that it is really data. So we have 3 columns and 4 rows that we're going to eventually want to load into a table, for example. Now, back over here into the FTP task editor. Stop on failure, true or false, your choice. Give it a name, give it a description. I usually try to be in my name verb-based, action-based. What am I doing? Download file from FTP server, for example. Now the bulk of the work is going to be done in the file transfer screen, tab, page, whatever this is. Those of you that are more experienced will know that we work a lot with expressions, often with FTP, but in this course we haven't gotten to expressions yet, so I'm going to leave that for the next chapter, in chapter 5, when we start talking about those. Okay? Now, here's where we are. Take a look at what we get the options to do with the FTP. Now, it's actually quite specific, okay? This is not just a generic, I'm going to open an FTP, then my next connection, or my next thing is I'll create a directory, then I'll upload a file, then I'll create a subdirectory and I'll upload a file. You're going to be very granular in what you're doing here. You will often find in an SSIS package, because you have so many options, that you have one FTP connection manager, but you might have 5, 4, 8 FTP tasks, because number one, you need to delete the remote files, then you need to remove a remote directory, then you need to create the remote directory again. I'm just kind of picking a couple things, and then you would need to send the files, and that would be 4 separate FTP tasks. So they all use the same connection, but each one of them will disconnect and reconnect as the task comes to it. So it's really nice that we have this. In the old DTS days, and if you're coming from DTS, this will mean something. We used to have to do everything in batch files. DTS had an FTP task, but it was so limited and so weak that I think unless you were doing the most simple download of a file, it was useless. You really had to go to batch, and you had to launch ftp.exe, and it was just no fun, because then you had your passwords in text format. And this is so much of an improvement here. So depending on what we're trying to do, notice if I choose to send files, it says, well, what's the local path? Well, I need to make a file connection. Now my file connection, notice it's an existing file. I can't choose to create the file because I'm saying it's an already file that exists. I'm sending it to that remote server. Okay? Now in the next video we're going to talk about wildcards and dealing with multiple files and such, but right now we're just going to stick to single file transfers. If I choose receive files, my local path now becomes, when I say my new connection, it has to be an existing folder. So let's define what local means in this context. Local means this machine, the machine that I am executing the SSIS package from. So I'm going to pick out my folder, and I'm just going to put it in the root. You will likely not have to put this in the root. You will likely put it in a real folder, because you're going to have very secure permissions on this. You're going to define that only the SSIS process, or whatever the proxy account that's running the job that runs this SSIS package, has access to write to that folder or to read from that folder. That's kind of out of the scope right here, but you do have to make sure you have the permissions set for that particular folder. But so what this is the machine that is executing the SSIS package. Okay? That's what local means. Do you want to overwrite the file? So if the file exists when you receive it, do you want to overwrite it? Your choice, yes or no. Okay? Now the remote path, this is possibly going to look a little strange to some of you, because you might not be that familiar with FTP. Notice the slash, the forward slash at the beginning of this. If you're used to working with FTP, you understand that's the root of the FTP folder. If not, that's what it means, the root of the FTP folder. We're going to go down to chapter 4, and we're going to say I want customers.txt. Okay. There we are. Now this is not a variable. I'm actually directly entering the path here. Okay, same up here. This is not a variable. I directly entered the value here. Now just to make sure I'm not hiding anything under my sleeves, you notice the root of the C drive doesn't have any customers.txt file. So let's execute it. Right now it's logging into learnitfirst.com, receiving the file, navigating to the folder. It has received the file. And sure enough, There's our customers.txt. So it downloaded, it received that particular file. Okay. Now I do have to say I did restrict our privilege in the ftp.learnitfirst.com to only being able to download. So we can't do sending of files, creating remote directories, or any deleting or anything like that. The permissions are, I didn't want to have to maintain this directory over somebody trying to put a 20 gig file in. Okay, so you're only going to be able to download files, but if you want, you can create local directories, you can do all kinds of things here. So notice you're just creating that local directory here. Okay. Let me go back to my receive files here and put this in. So it's very, very simple to do single file FTP. It's very simple to create folders, to delete folders. All of that is pretty easy. Notice that if I said to delete the remote files, I can pass in which remote file that I want to delete. If I say delete or remove the directory, I can then choose the directory that I want to delete. So right now when I clicked that button, it's logging in. So I just simply choose chapter 4 folder. This won't work. I would get a permissions error if I tried that, because the permissions on the ftp.learnitfirst do not allow using that. Okay, so, and I don't get a whole lot of fancy error messages here. All it says is unable to remove. It doesn't say because of permissions errors, just says unable to remove remote directory, but that's what it's for. Okay, so if you get that. So sending single file, super easy to do this with. And let's see, where did I think I've changed something here just through talking. Oh, receive files, that's what I wanted. And I wanted to receive customers.txt. Now, what would I do? What would be the next step? The next step, generally speaking, would be to drag a bulk insert or a data flow task, and I would then go into my data flow task. And I know I haven't shown you this yet. We're going to get to it in an upcoming video in this chapter. But now I would specify that my flat file source is the text file that I just downloaded. And thankfully, this is taking so long. What on earth is going on? So now my flat file source, I just make a new connection manager. I don't understand why. I got plenty of memory, plenty of CPU. C:\customers. Don't you worry about this. I'm going to show you all about what this is, and we're going to be very comfortable with this. But you see, I'm just picking it out right there, choosing that the column names are in the first row. It picks it up, and so now I would simply drag it and put it into a SQL server, or wherever. It doesn't have to be a SQL server, but I would now choose my SQL server. Let me get rid of those. So we just put it in the local host and in the learnitfirst.com database. And we'll make a new table based on that. So we'll call our table customers. And we'll make that not null, primary key. And I'll zoom in here in just a second. And we'll make this an integer. Okay, and we'll make that 28, 128. Now I'm going, I messed up all kind of. I'm actually just going to accept the defaults here and change the name. I don't want to get into data types yet. We haven't really covered that yet here. So I just simply map the columns. And that's really it. So now I'm downloading the FTP. And then, like, if I deleted this, so there's no C drive, just show you how this works. Make sure you can see that there is no data in the learnitfirst.com customers table. So select all from, was it customer or, yeah, customer. So there's nothing in there. So we execute our task. It downloads the file. When the download is successful, remember our precedence constraint, then it loaded that up into the data flow. Okay? And that's it. Pretty simple.